Welcome to the debate. Today we're looking at two really popular takes on the same idea. The original Japanese Ossan's Love and the more recent Thai adaptation. Both shows have that core love triangle, right? An average guy, Haruta in Japan, Hang in Thailand, suddenly finds himself pursued by his older male boss and his younger male roommate. But, while the setup's similar, how they execute it diverges quite a bit.
Right, and that difference really brings up a key question, I think, about how mainstream queer romance works best. Is it more effective to present this sort of ideal world, a story space where there's no external prejudice, letting the focus stay just on the universal parts of romance? Or does a story gain more depth, more cultural relevance by actually digging into social anxieties and, well, internalized homophobia?
Yeah, and I'm firmly on the side that the Japanese original's ideal world strategy is incredibly strong and, frankly, universally appealing. By just normalizing these relationships, making them non-controversial within the show's world, it avoids being preachy. It lets the story zero in on the human experience of being shocked by love, being indecisive, growing up a bit. That gives it, I think, a broader reach.
And I'm taking the opposite stance here. I feel the Thai adaptation shows that, look, ignoring the cultural air around the characters while maybe making things faster can leave the narrative feeling a bit insubstantial. The Thai version consciously chose to explore real social fears, real internalized struggles, and that, for me, gives the characters' journeys much more weight and grounds the whole thing in a reality that feels relevant.
Well, see, the brilliance, I think, of the Japanese original is its economy. Its narrative is tight, its intent clear. It was written quite deliberately as a romance between men, not some kind of political lesson. And by setting it in this universe where, yeah, homophobia just isn't a factor, it strips away all that sociopolitical stuff. It lets the romance be the focus. And that focus across just 7 episodes means the plot just rockets along. It builds to this really satisfying emotional payoff that's all about Haruta, the protagonist, finally growing up and making an active choice. It argues for acceptance by just showing it as a given.
I get the appeal of that, narrative purity, that efficiency, but I do find that premise fundamentally limiting, perhaps. The Thai adaptation, it uses its platform, its screen time, to really acknowledge the kind of emotional landscape that, frankly, a lot of queer viewers navigate. By going longer, 12 episodes, it creates the space needed to layer in that real cultural context. And we see this really clearly with Mo, the roommate character. His struggles aren't just, oh, I have a crush. They're rooted in past trauma, leading to this quite debilitating anxiety and, yes, internalized biphobia that he actually has to work through. That complexity, which the Japanese version just sidesteps, offers a much more, I'd say, resonant and mature theme than simple romantic indecisionness.
Okay, but I'm not totally convinced that adding external social conflict automatically makes the central romance better or deeper. The Japanese version succeeded, I think, because it generated really high emotional stakes purely from internal conflict and the relationship dynamics themselves. Haruta's whole turmoil was about his shock, his comical indecision, which, is a pretty universal feeling, whether you're choosing between 2 potential partners or 2 job offers. And crucially, the other guys, Kurosawa, the boss, and Maki, the roommate, they weren't struggling with their identities. They knew what they wanted. That confidence is what drives the rivalry and the plot. It allowed the story to be efficient, to keep that kind of manic, almost farcical energy going.
See, I find that focus on Haruta's indecision sometimes makes him seem, well, frustratingly childish. It relies a lot on slapstick reactions rather than maybe motivated emotional growth. The Thai version, though, it gives Hang Suitors, the Thai protagonist, these specific, really deep-rooted motivations that feel much more compelling than just sudden workplace infatuations. Think about Mo again. He's been holding on to these suppressed, unrequited feelings for Hang since they were colleagues years ago. So when he finally acts, his battle with this massive anxiety, this internalized fear of rejection, it gives his intensity real emotional weight. His confession scenes, they feel less like aggressive pursuit and more like these desperate, anxiety-fueled attempts to communicate something really vulnerable. That's quite different from the sometimes almost sexually suggestive way the JPN version played those moments. Tackling that internalized struggle, I think, just provides a richer conflict than merely reacting to unexpected attention. And achieving that kind of deeper, culturally specific conflict, it really needed that structural expansion. The 12-episode format wasn't just padding. It felt like a necessary choice to get that character depth across. It gave room for things outside the main chaotic love triangle. Like, look at the Thai boss, Kongdish, making him a widower with a daughter, Chair Aim, which, yes, is a detail borrowed from the Japanese sequel In the Sky, gives his pursuit a very different flavor. It's more mature, more measured, focused on finding genuine connection later in life. That feels much more empathetic, I think, than the original Japanese boss who was married but also apparently happily dating other women right before his big confession. That character sometimes bordered on feeling a little predatory.
The Thai version seemed to consciously trade some of that narrative speed for more grounded, mature character building.
Okay, fair point on the boss characterization, but I have to challenge this idea that expansion automatically equals depth. Sometimes it just means the focus gets diffused, you know? While those expanded backstories are there, the extra length in the Thai version really does compromise the narrative efficiency, the sheer momentum that made the original so gripping. The original 7 episodes just had this fierce, relentless pace. In contrast, the Thai version brings in numerous subplots, like that whole extended bit about Hang's mother's illness and her bucket list, or just the general slowing down that happens around episodes 8 to 11. Critics did point this out as feeling like padding. The fact that it took, 5 extra hours to resolve the same basic romantic tension, that suggests to me maybe a lack of focus, an inability to keep the tight energy a romantic comedy needs. The Japanese version's brevity forced every scene to count, which really amplified the comedic payoff. And furthermore, the real structural strength of the Japanese original is how coherent and earned its ending feels. That payoff is a direct result of the high-energy setup. Haruta makes a definitive, proactive choice. He literally leaves his own wedding to the boss and races off to physically stop Maki from leaving. That solidifies a resolution, and it feels entirely rooted in his own emotional growth. That moment of agency is just pivotal. When a story avoids being preachy and just focuses on the characters' hearts, that physical choice at the end feels incredibly genuine. The Thai version, on the other hand, it takes this really abrupt turn in the finale. It throws in a genre trope, this sudden, kind of jarring amnesia plotline. That shift towards melodrama not only feels anticlimactic after 12 episodes exploring grounded anxiety, but the sequences that follow, like the musical numbers, they felt absurd and seemed to undercut the very thematic seriousness they'd worked to build.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that argument that a questionable choice in the final act completely cancels out all the thematic work done before it. Look, while the amnesia plot was, certainly a disappointing use of a tired BL trope, it doesn't just erase the intention behind the adaptation as a whole. We have to look at the entire series, which consistently tried to soften its characters and use that cultural specificity to deepen things. For example, think about Ten, the roommate's ex-boyfriend. In the Thai version, he's portrayed as relatively sweet, actually kind of supportive. That's a world away from the original's Takagawa, who was pretty much just an antagonistic rival. This consistent effort towards softer, more empathetic portrayals across the board that reinforces the adaptation's goal, exploring emotional depth and compassion within its specific cultural context, even if, yes, the final landing was a bit messy.
I think the core debate here really comes down to the ethics maybe of narrative normalization. The Japanese original makes a powerful statement, I believe, by normalizing queer love through omission. It simply shows the relationship as ordinary. It demands the audience do the work to accept it as non-controversial. That very focused commitment to universal human comedy, to romance, results in a narrative that's cohesive and arguably structurally superior in its payoff. It champions equality by just treating these relationships as a given, right, from the start.
And the Thai adaptation counters that, well, for many audiences, especially those dealing with the actual weight of social reality, normalization through confrontation is more necessary, or at least more resonant. By using its longer format to explicitly explore the struggles tied to queer anxiety, to internalized homophobia, the Thai version grounds its narrative in a reality many viewers recognize. It provides thematic depth and maybe a mirror for people dealing with those specific cultural pressures.
So yes, while the execution might have been criticized sometimes for pacing or that messy ending, its intent to address social dynamics adds critical weight and value. It's undeniable.
So really, both versions of Ossan's Love offer distinct and I'd say successful in their own ways, models for storytelling in this genre. The difference really lies between, on one hand, a tightly focused, high-energy narrative centered on pure romantic mechanics,
And on the other, a longer, more socially grounded adaptation that uses cultural specifics to try and give richer character motivation and explore internal conflicts more deeply. Listeners will ultimately have to decide which approach, that subtlety or that explicitness, resonated more strongly with them as viewers.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.